want to talk about what success looks like. So a friend of mine who's in the audience here today said something really good, and I thought, you know, that's it. What does success look like for this program? He says, like, if you take on these actions and you don't get made fun of, and you're a farmer, and you don't get made fun of in the beer tent at the fall fair, that's success. You've affected a cultural shift. And that's what the lady from Costa Rica was saying, and I know kind of maybe didn't come out that clearly. Like, if you've been to Costa Rica, the people in Costa Rica are into it. They are into that stuff. They don't just talk about it. There's not a scrap of garbage on the beach. The place has embraced environmental values in a huge way, and it's a huge part of their economy. That happened in 20 years. So it can happen. It's exciting. And we heard from our friend at the UN talking about how the agricultural sector is not only central to our economy, but holds enormous potential to be part of the solution. I think we all hopefully buy into that. The Ecological Services Initiative is about the research and development of this concept. Some people have looked at it and thought about it as a program. It's not a program. We actually actively avoided giving our initiative a name. We tried to avoid it becoming a brand, actually, because we didn't want to burden a future program with some language and some names that people were familiar with. But we ended up kind of doing that inadvertently, and so we have more of an awareness than we kind of wanted in a way, but I guess it's helped us move forward to some degree. And who are we? I would just like everybody in the room who's ever had anything to do with the Ecological Services Initiative, stand up, please, because you basically, I think just about everybody in the room that's had anything, the economists, the scientists, the policymakers, all those people that have had, Abra, come on, you're not standing up. It's a big part of the audience here, and it's way bigger than anything that we've ever done by ourselves out in the Kootenays. It's all over the province. There are probably hundreds of people that have been involved directly, and we can't thank them enough. The people from the township of Langley have really taken in this concept and embraced it. Jason Chu has been instrumental in getting this concept, helping to move it forward. Often people that are in staff positions within local government work behind the scenes. You don't really hear their name, but I really want to thank you, Jason, for all the work that you've done for us. Thank you very much. And Dave, where's Dave? He's standing at the back of the room there. Unbelievable. This guy squeezed $4,000 at the last minute out of the Minister of the Environment, Mary Polak, to help to pay for this conference. So he's a miracle worker as far as I'm concerned. Anyone that can do that. Let's give Dave a hand. Anyway, you're all great people, and you've all been a big instrumental part of moving this forward. We already heard a lot about what ecosystem services are. Photosynthesis is an obvious example. Oxygen doesn't have a lot of value until we seal off the room and say there's no more air coming into this room. Suddenly people are willing to pay. And that's what happened in New York City, the example that most people are familiar with. They needed to build a new filtration plant to deal with their sewage, but they decided that they'd look at a program like this and pay people upstream to take better care of their environment and the landowners, and they saved their city billions of dollars in doing so. Threats or opportunity. This guy, to some people, represents a threat. And we are, and I'm one of them. I do, and my farming activities can represent a threat to the environment. But what we also have to acknowledge is the potential, as the executive director of the UNEP did, that these farmers are the key in many ways to the success of our whole ecosystem. But at the same time, and you should speak to farmers, sometimes we kind of bury our head in the sand and we think that we're not a threat and we want to just talk about the opportunity side. So we don't want to do that. We're not really out here to bury our head in the sand. We have to acknowledge both of those pieces. We know that ecosystem services tend to decline over time. Isn't that true, Mr. Brown, Dr. Brown? So we think that opportunity in that agricultural landscape is significant to stop that decline and actually turn it the other way. And I think a lot of people feel that way, and some of you have experienced that, as in the example out in Delta with the program that's been running out there for many years. And so if we're just holding our own, if we just stopped the decline, that actually would be a form of success. But we think we can do more than that, and we can actually improve things. Like, there's a significant opportunity in the land base and the farmers that they could do. They just don't have the resources to do that. So we're dependent on how much they produce because of what's in their pocket. That's the limitation right now. But yet that's nowhere near the potential of their operation and their land base. And so just quickly, we've talked about this before, that when producers do something, farmers do something, they can make money or lose money or break even. And society can kind of experience the same sort of thing, where they do better on projects or lose money and break even. But when we think a payment is justified is when the farmer is not making any money at that, but there's a huge net benefit to society. That's when the payment is justified, clearly and easily justified. And we know that there are a lot of farmers that are disappearing in our landscape. In my region, in the last right in my little valley, in the last 11 years, we've lost half of our agricultural producers. And that land is being converted to development. And I'm in a hotel downtown Langley, and I stopped. Katie and Emily are here from Invermere with me, and we were just going out to get something to drink last night, and we stopped, and I said, look at that. So there's a wetland in the middle of the parking lot for the hardware store, and in front of our hotel, and it's completely surrounded by a chain link fence. It's probably the size of this room or smaller, and there's a wetland in there, and everything around it is literally paved. Like, what is the opportunity? That's great. I mean, it's still serving some wetland function, but there is no connectivity there. There's no possibility to enhance those ecosystem services much beyond what they've already done. And there's a huge chain link fence around it. Think about that compared to that same wetland or creek on a farm. So the payment for ecosystem services, we heard from Ina this morning about that shift in Costa Rica, but we're looking for this Made in Canada solution, and that was the impetus for our program getting started. And we take this approach, that we will start somewhere. We need to start at a reasonable starting point and improve and go through some improvement loop. We showed that earlier. That's a part of our adaptive management approach, and you folks are part of the analysis portion, where we're just getting ready to move this into what you're going to talk about today is going to guide where we go in the next year, 2 years, and 10 years. So we started just really quickly with the project initiation phase. We started with literature reviews. We started with consulting a lot of you, some of you who are experts. Nancy was there just about from day one. She jumped right on board without any hesitation. She's got an amazing background. We were so lucky to have her. We took the model that we sort of thought would work, and we started with my own ranch because it was easy. And I didn't have to get the approval of somebody else. And if we messed it up, I would be the only one that suffered. So we took that test, that idea of how the model could work, and we established the first demonstration site. And these are some of my cows messing in the water. And we happen to be just upstream of the water supply for our community. And so that's important. Obvious connection for ecosystem services there. High biological values, and we had a lot of species at risk. So that was an issue. That's an overview of the lake. We fenced out part of the lake as a part of this project, and we kind of had a small payment that was generated. In this case, it was $100 per acre. I won't go into all the details, but so one part of the lake was fenced and one wasn't. Here's just an example of some of the results. And we didn't do a huge empirical study. We did do some work with the help of Dave Trotter, another guy that was there right from the beginning. Dave, thank you very much. So comparing the two sites, one where the cows are drinking and still have access to the water. Independent water quality experts came and tested the water and sent it off to lab. We knew that our cows were not doing the greatest in that pasture, and our calves seemed to be sick, but we weren't 100% sure of the water. When we did the test, we were sure. We were exceeding the E. coli guidelines for livestock, which are pretty high. The threshold for cows can drink a lot of dirty water and kind of do okay. So unfortunately, in this particular spot, it was a bad problem. Where we excluded them, we met the guidelines by a long shot. In fact, I think we almost approached human drinking water quality standards, just not so far away. So it was amazing to see those kinds of results. We did a bunch of research on that. The basic results of that was that the concept has strong potential and the model need to be developed for wider application. Phase 2, so that's what we're doing, model development. That's what we were doing for the last while. And I don't have time to talk to you about how Dave Trotter just about got killed when we brought this bull down to Granville Island. And as we were loading it, Joe, do you remember that? The knot was getting, or the threads were getting very frayed on that rope as this 2,000-pound animal was pulling very strong backward as we tried to load him onto the thing. And Joe said, I think I knew you were in trouble when I saw the change in your face, because my jaw just dropped when I saw the bull just about escape, and we almost had the running of the bulls down there. It was close, and I think, anyway, I won't get into it. So thank God we lived through that. And so what we had to do, we determined, was to scale up the concept. Tried in a lot of different places. We didn't have that much money, so we couldn't do a huge amount of it in any one region, but we could scatter sites all over the place. See, does this have the potential to reach the provincial scale? Start the conversation in those regions by just having even the odd demonstration site, because we know the concept will not take hold until somebody can say, oh yeah, I saw that in action. I went to Joe's farm and it seemed like a pretty good deal to me. So that was successful in that when every farmer we ever proposed it to signed up. Everyone that signed up, like this fellow in the Peace River, maintained the practice that would protect and take that extraordinary action to protect the environment and fence his cattle out of the wetland. Judy Guichon, current Lieutenant Governor, is one of our sites. She signed on, or her daughter did. She was not allowed to. She had to divest herself of all her things that she owned in the province in order to be the Lieutenant Governor. And this is her daughter on her site. So we did that all across the landscape. This is an example out in the Calgary watershed, similar scenario. She did a great job there. We also came down here and did some specific work on species at risk, and Dwayne was there. When I came to his house, Dwayne invited me down to a meeting, and I thought, okay, well, and I've been working at this for a bit of time already, and I'm used to going to meetings with producers, and they usually are pretty warm to the idea. So I assumed I'm going to a pretty friendly meeting. However, when I got there, I realized things are a little different down here in the Lower Mainland. There are some major issues that make it unique, and it re-emphasized to me, and something that Dave Trotter identified early about the importance of, and we've heard it again and again through the presentations, that these concepts have to make sense within the region that they're being applied. One size won't fit all. We might be able to have a provincial superstructure that can support it, but at some point you have to get down and really understand why Dwayne is so upset about those bloody frogs that are out in that creek there. Thank God we survived that as well. And Dwayne, thank God, is here to live to tell about it as well. So we can get by that. I think that it is really important to do that. That brings us to where we are today and establishing the long-term program. This is what we're really shooting for. We've set ourselves a really aggressive target to move from pilot to program. We think we can do some type of a program that will persist over the longer term within the next 4 years. That's a pretty aggressive timeline, and we're doing everything that is in our human power to get us there. At the last forum, many of you were at these different forums, and don't worry if you weren't at any of them. There was a kind of a select group. I don't even know how the invitations were sent out, but there were a series of these forums, 1, 2, and 3, that were looking into the possibility of this concept working. And at our last forum, which was Forum 3, there was unanimous agreement on a 9-point Ecosystem Services Initiative framework. So how are we going to get from where we are today with no long-term program to actually having a program in place. And it was the similar composition of the group that's here. There might have been a few more industry folks because there happened to coincide with a board meeting for the BC Ag Council. But that was really important, and that provided us with those 9 steps, 1, 2, 3 on, said this is the way to go, and this is what we did was to take that and turn that into a work plan, took all those steps, we just took that and said, okay, these are the steps, let's put some detail to that and put some budget to that, and that's when we went out to Dave Hendrickson and a bunch of other funders and pitched it. And thank God some of them actually took that, and we've now been able to get our project started. So if that 5-year pilot that we're working on has 3 kind of key components to it: establishing the infrastructure, establishing the demonstration sites, and initiating the long-term program. So we went out, and many of you, thankfully, have been part of our working groups. So we have a province-wide working group. It hasn't met for some time, although it was there and fundamental in getting things going. There are regional working groups that are located in the Lower Mainland, in the East Kootenays, and the Okanagan. And then we have a series of 6 sub-regional working groups as well. So I'm sorry for my kindergarten drawing here, but I had to do this fairly quickly, and it's just something that their question came up, and I thought, you know, I really need to show how the model works. So this is the one that we're working towards. Whether this actually comes to fruition or not, we will see, but this is the one that we've identified we'd like to do. There's the BC Agricultural Council. Who doesn't know what the BC Ag Council is? Good. Okay, BC Ag Council is the coalition of agricultural commodity groups that combine together to form this thing called the BC Ag Council. It's like an umbrella organization for all the different types of agriculture in BC. Underneath of them, they have something called ArdCorp. We have Karen here today from ArdCorp. Karen, can you put up your hand? She's my boss for some of the work that I do. And she's one of the managers there at ArdCorp. We envisioned that the BC Ag Council would oversee this concept. They oversee the environmental farm plan through ArdCorp already. And so it's a natural fit that this would combine with the environmental farm plan, the Ecological Services Initiative. So there's a superstructure there that can support that. And that they would pool the funds from the funding sources, and a number of different funding sources. That's something we heard again and again too. It's important to get here as many different funding sources. Pool that into one pot, and the farmer and the guy with the hat on down below, that there be a single interface between those two entities there. How am I doing for time?
You need to wrap up.
Okay, I'm going to cruise. Okay, so we went through a process to get ourselves focused on from the provincial level down to the site level by using our working groups. We collected information on, once we got down to the regional level, we have a process of figuring out which sites offer the best opportunity. Emily is here. She's done a lot of that work on the computer. And the process basically works like this. So a farmer would do their environmental farm plan. They'd take on some kind of an implementation of a BMP, like put in a fence to hold cattle out of an important water source. They sign a contract with the ESI, or if the BC Ag Council gets it to be the administrator, they would sign that to them, with them. They do some form of maintenance, and as per what they agreed to in the contract, if they maintain it, they get the payment, and ultimately all of that gets monitored again by the environmental farm plan, and they report all those results. We report all those results back to the funders through ArdCorp. So that's the basic thing. One-stop shop, planning advisor is the one-stop interface at the farm. We combine all the different funding sources. We don't have time to talk about all those, obviously. Focused on water quality, biodiversity, species at risk. We use the network of existing environmental farm planners. Look at that guy standing at the back of the room. Get serious, Dave. He's a really important guy, and he's the face of this. He's the interface. Farmers like him, they trust him, and he does a good job at what he does. He helps them fill in the forms. He helps them do an environmental farm plan. The farmer does the practice, puts in the fence, does what they're going to do, signs that contract. If they maintain it, they get a payment. We know communications are critical. That's what we're focused on working with. The people, general society does not generally think about the same way that we, the people in this room, think. They have a different perspective. The scientists, the academics, and the farmers think one way, and generally the public thinks another. And Dave was saying how bad our language is. You're right, Dave. Ecosystem services, the term has been studied in the United States, and it's pretty much like this is about, I think, the third page of this chart that shows all these different terms. This is like the second or third from the bottom of all these different alternative words. So it's not just a little bit bad, it's completely off. And so we know we have to do something about that. So we've got a communication firm, a big time communication, not big time, but a very good communication firm who can help us with that language and help us with that communication. Funders are standing there waiting for us to produce the results. I believe that if something exists, it must be possible. This is my dad's farm in Switzerland. They've had these programs for many, many years there, and in fact, they believe they can't farm without them. 52,000 farmers signed up in England, 64 million hectares are enrolled, and they announced $6 billion more for that program just recently. So we need you as partners, and there's a Canadian Pig Ecosystems. We've got together as a coalition of ecosystem services, payment for ecosystem services pilots, so we can come forward with a single voice and talk to the federal government and talk to the provincial governments and knit together these little, they're not that little, but these pilots that are all scattered throughout the area, and it's amazing how common our experiences are. So she talked about Alice. They got a problem with siltation out there, and they're using Alice to do that. It does work as a part of, with Growing Forward $2, significant project. And just to wrap up then, so Ina said that we have a few things that were needed to be in place for Costa Rican's example to be successful. They started with prohibition. We have a Species at Risk Act come into place. We do have legislation. We have an enforcement person in the room with us today with an enforcement background. Some of that exists. Maybe we need more of it. Some people would argue for that. They had a way to capture money from negative impacts to the environment. They had a fund that collects that. Remember we talked about that common funding pot that BC Ag Council would be involved with? They had a national program manager. In this model, BCAC might be that entity. Local facilitators, we have great guys like Dave who are at the local level that help to facilitate this. And finally, we have a mechanism for the payment to flow. I think we have a lot of the parts. We might have to do some work on them, but I think we're on the right track. That's it. Thank you very much.